Hello there, and welcome back to Archaeology. Different hat for this episode. Wearing a different hat, one could say. So the purpose of this video is, again, just a little bit of an update, and also a review. And I'll get onto that in a moment. The update is, things were a bit slow last week. I did try and upload as much of the content as I promised in that video I did at the beginning of the week as possible. The delay in review to the article that appeared in New Scientist about the DNA, the beaker DNA, is still going to go ahead. However, when reading it, I actually discovered I needed to do a bit more research before I felt comfortable in commenting on some of the ideas in that video, and I didn't want to do a misleading video or not put all the facts out there. Something else I talked about last week was doing a video with regards to the Cadbury advertising campaign, and that's still going to go ahead as well. That will probably be moved now to next week, early next week, as I'm still working on the script for that. And the very few videos that I am actually going to script to make sure I get across all the kind of points I want to get to in that video about the issues that kind of brought up, but also the sort of positives it brought up as well. So those two things are still going ahead. However, reviews. Now, something I promised way back last year, actually, in my blog, was that I would do a retrospective review on Hengeworld by Mike Pitts, which is part of the purpose of this video this evening, not the only purpose. I wanted to talk a bit more about, this has led into some sort of other ideas. The reason why I wanted to look at Hengeworld, well, not just Hengeworld, but Hengeworld, I'll get on to why Hengeworld in a moment, was in terms of books on archaeology, how good are they? I mean, how long do they survive? How good is that information? How long can the information in those books still be considered good information for people to pick up to want to learn about that subject? And again, I have no idea how that's actually going to turn out yet, even though I'm looking at Mike Pitts' book briefly in this video. So it's going to look at that. I also want to review, I'm not just going to look at old books, I'm going to look at new books as well. In fact, I've come to very close to finishing this book, which I have been trying to read since Christmas, Neolithic Britain, The Transformation of Social Worlds by Keith Ray and Gillian Thomas. The review will be coming out for that soon, be it video, be it actual written blog, or maybe a bit of both, not quite sure yet. See how that goes. And again, I do want to look at some other books, specifically books that got me interested as a child in archaeology. Look at some of my old academic textbooks and how I feel about that, and also look at other sort of academic texts, especially sort of books which come from people's PhD thesis or other thesi, and look at the sort of nature of academic writing in that sense. So, on to looking at books. As I mentioned, Neolithic, from the new books, the two which I'm currently looking at is the Neolithic Britain one. I've also got the Exploring Celtic Origins edited by Barry Cunliffe and John Koch. Got the Finds Identified book, which I posted on my blog a few weeks ago that I was reading, and also the Oxford Handbook of Neolithic Europe, although that one will probably take quite a long time for me to actually read through and review. Academic texts, a book which has been sitting on my shelf since I think last year, which I haven't really got around to reading yet, which is Fragmenting the Chieftain, a practice based on the study of early Iron Age Hallstatt sea elite burials in the Low Countries, which is basically a publication of I believe, a PhD thesis. So that is going to review. But the subject for this video and for the next few videos are going to be books that I read when I was younger, which really got me interested in archaeology. The highlight of that is obviously, well, not the highlight, but one which focused today is Hengeworld by Mike Pitts. But other books at the time were Britain BC, for example, by Francis Pryor. And this also kind of comes into academic as well, because it's a book which I was made to read extensively for my A-level archaeology and also during my undergraduate archaeology. I imagine that's probably the same for quite a few people. Also, another book on academics, especially from an undergraduate perspective. I know lots of people have very mixed feelings about this particular book, Archaeological Theory. So oddly, I really hated reading this book when I was doing my undergraduate degree. I've gone back to reading it more recently and I found it a lot more interesting. I don't know why that is. Maybe matured a little bit more, potentially, or maybe greater appreciation, or maybe just because it was forced on us in quite a strong way during that period. You just sort of grew to resent it. I think a lot of people in my course did as well, and maybe on other courses, if you had to read that book. If you had to read that book for your degree, do let me know. What do you think of it? How you thought about it then? Has it changed now? So we'll look at that. Ooh, I keep on knocking my monitor, sorry about that. I'm not recording in my usual desk space, so things are a bit tight. Other books which got me interested when I was young is Bronze Age Britain by Mike Parker Pearson. That was a big influence on me. Prehistoric Britain by Timothy Darvill. A lot of actually the other English heritage publications as well, some which came out before I was born and some when I was very young. And it's very much in particular I want to focus on looking at those, look at their information now, and if someone not knowing too much about archaeology were to pick them up, what kind of view would they get from that subject period, and how nowadays does that still stand up? Does the base research still stand up? Does it still give them a good idea, or are there going to be quite a few red herrings out there which may mislead them? So moving on to Hengeworld. Hengeworld is actually one of the first books on archaeology I actually remember reading. As you can tell, this is my original copy. It's been well loved. I think it came out in 2001. Yeah, 2001. I would have been 11. I think one of the first books I actually saved up my own money to buy. And I loved this book when I was younger. And if I'm honest, I still do. Part of that is nostalgia, but part of that is I just still think it's a good book. Now, that is to say that some of the information in there now is potentially a little bit outdated. But before we get into that, I'll read you the blurb. As famous as it is mysterious, Stonehenge lies at the heart of our imagined past. Nearby at Avebury is one of the most extraordinary ancient religious landscapes. For the first time in over 40 years, an archaeologist close to both sites presents the story from the inside, starting at the excavation that followed the collapse of a Stonehenge megalith on the last night of the 19th century, and ending with dramatic discovery in Avebury at the close of the 20th century. Hengeworld tells how recent archaeology has revolutionised the way we think about great stone circles and the people who built them. Finally, Pitt shows a pattern emerging from the archaeology of these sites which explains the relationship between them and reconstructs the ceremony that would have symbolised so I just reading the sort of reviews on the back, and the Manchester Evening News described it as reads like a whodunit, which I think is quite apt, really. I think the reason why I really liked this book was it really helped me when I was younger put Stonehenge in its much wider context. It talked a lot about, it was a lot more about the landscape and the people as well as the monument, you know, there's sort of that multifaceted approach. And I love the way it starts, really. There's a fantastic bit, actually, in Chapter 1, New Posts. I'm just going to read a very brief to avoid, obviously, copyright issues. On the shelf behind me, there are 2 or 3 dozen books about Stonehenge, at least half of them published in the last 20 years, and this is but a selection from those written in English. Fast search has just selected 55,978 websites that I can read about Stonehenge. Obviously now if you're going to use any form of search engine, be it an academic one or just a general one like Google, you're more than likely to get more than 55,978 websites about Stonehenge. And Stonehenge is that wonderful thing which evokes a great deal in people, imagination, and lots of people have their own stories and their ideas about Stonehenge. Some, for me, better than others, more based on archaeology than potentially other aspects that it could be based on. And Hengeworld really made me experience for the first time the sort of nature of the archaeology and the complexity of that landscape. In part one, the chapter from Woodhenge to Superhenge talks about the very British habit of building these types of henge monuments in particular. Yeah, sorry, I'm being vague. Rereading this book is bringing back a lot of memories. But again, rereading this, there are issues with the book. But what's best about this book is its approach, and that's the importance of Stonehenge's archaeology, both on a micro and macro scale. It's about its relationship to the landscape, to other sites, and a landscape which we now know, due to modern excavations such as Henge, which has only been going on for the past few years, how complex and how extraordinary that landscape is still, and how much there's still to find. You know, especially, you know, with things like the controversy that happened when the digging in the drilling in the Stonehenge landscape, which destroyed a prehistoric hunting platform. We're still uncovering. Unfortunately, that was quite an unfortunate instance of discovering that. But there's still a lot of stuff left to uncover. And Hengeworld that does acknowledge that there is still a lot to uncover. But obviously, a lot of things have changed in the almost 20 years that this was written. Lots of developments. As you said, the landscape has changed a lot. Dates have changed a lot. Ideas about the late Stone Age and early Bronze Age has changed a lot due to recent DNA studies, especially ones published very recently, talking about, you know, the potential for what appears to be population replacement. I'm not going to get too into that now because that actually links into the New Scientist article that I hope to be looking at. But that is the nature, though, of written books, I think. Although it's getting better, publication is becoming a lot quicker. The publication of any research takes a long time. It's not just down to the actual technology, but it's to do with first of all, the actual work being carried out. Then after you have the excavation, the post-excavation takes a very long time. Not technology, but just man hours as well, depending on what the excavation throws up. And other issues as well arise. You know, then things generally have to be peer-reviewed, and then if it wants to go into publication, you know, it has to be written, it has to go several phases of development, it's got to be edited, and then it's got to be published. You've either got to find a publisher, you've got to try and self-publish it yourself, or launch it in e-format or something like that. And when you consider that timescale from the excavation to the publication, lots of other things have happened, potentially other excavations which have revealed new ideas. So things in academic print can almost go out of, they can be almost, their viability or their usefulness can almost be gone before they actually get to the original, actually into the printed format. And I'm not saying that is the case, I'm just saying it can be in academia. By the time you've done the research, you've done all those other steps to get to a point where you're ready to publish or release a book, it might not be as valid anymore. And obviously that's not going to be the case with every academic subject or even every site or idea in archaeology, because it's going to be dependent on what people are researching and what kind of studies and excavations go on, either intentionally or unintentionally, being the case of things not going the way you expect during an excavation, or something like a rescue dig turns up something unexpected, or any dig turns up anything unexpected. So that is always a problem. Then the published book meant for a wider audience, obviously within academia publishing, sometimes those things come out quicker and people are able to get hold of that information quicker. But any book which is out there for the general public, which is really what I want to focus on with these books, is maybe it's down to us as or archaeologists in general, with how we write these books, that we take on a certain responsibility for that, and we should do anything we write down. We should always think about not just how people are going to receive it immediately, but how people are going to view it in the future. Is it written in such a way that people can understand that things have changed? And I feel that often people, not archaeologists, but people, if they pick up a book, people who are not in that academic field or don't understand academic publishing or writing, don't necessarily understand how quickly the field can move on and how quickly ideas can proceed. And not necessarily all those are immediately published or immediately available in the academic world. So what is out there in print isn't necessarily representative of the academic or professional thinking. So I think this is very difficult for non-archaeologists or non-enthusiasts in archaeology to potentially understand about archaeology and some of the things that archaeologists talk about, especially when it comes down to the slightly more, I don't want to use the term ritual aspects, things which are harder to quantify, where things are often being reinterpreted, such as Stonehenge and its landscape, and not just the physical bits, but the bits that people are trying to understand about Stonehenge and its purpose. Again, I apologise, I'm not recording in my usual environment, so there has been a bit more background noise, the phone going off, the clock is chiming. Quite a nice clock though, so again, apologies. This was only supposed to be a brief video, and it's moving on for 20 minutes because I'm rambling and getting too caught up in getting excited about reading books that I found really, well, they still fascinate me, and I still love reading them. And it was people like Mike Pitts and Sir Barry Cunliffe and Mike Parker Pearson and Francis Pryor whose publications really got me interested in archaeology from a very, very young age, and got me to pursue it academically. Unfortunately not yet quite professionally in the same way that I'd like to, but certainly got me involved professionally in other aspects of archaeology and that sector, mainly in the museum side. So, does Hengeworld still hold up? Yes, to a certain extent, mainly in the way that it explains and looks at a landscape. And I think that's really the most important thing, really. It helps us understand Stonehenge in a wider landscape. The ideas it talks about now maybe are not quite as up-to-date as they could be, but again, any book published from Stonehenge is unlikely to have the most up-to-date information, just because it's not currently possible really to do that in publishing for a wider audience, for the Joe blog, and for me, because I don't get to see as much actual professional journals or published site reports as I'd like to. I see some, I do, but not as much as I'd like. And yeah, it's tricky, I think, writing books like that, and full credit to them. It's a very difficult process. Mike Pitts obviously is still a fantastic archaeologist, a great contributor to archaeology, and I don't mean to be... if this gets to Mike, hi Mike, I doubt it will, but I really do enjoy the book. It has been an inspiration, and I think that's why it's maybe very difficult for me to talk about it in this way. So it does, for me, it does still hold useful, and I think it'll be useful for people to understand Stonehenge as a landscape. But just to point out there to everyone who buys these books, and especially buys slightly older books, that it is not going to be necessarily representative of current thinking or current interpretation. So the books out there, please do read them. There are a lot of books out there are fantastic, but be careful with books, with what books you choose, obviously, because there's a lot of really, really bad books out there as well. Some of, again, which I hope to review on the channel. So just be careful with the books you pick up. Check to see when they were published or what time, or and just be aware that ideas have changed. Things are much easier to check now. Google is a fantastic research tool, especially if you refine it to look at academic articles. So, but always, obviously, do your own research. Don't, even in stuff that I say in my videos, don't take my word for it. Go and look at things for yourself. I won't necessarily have the most up-to-date information. Some of it be my own interpretation, my own opinion. So do your own research if it's a thing which interests you. Look at a variety of books, a variety of resources, but remember that those resources were written at a particular time, where a particular style of thinking was about, or a particular way of interpreting things, or maybe not. Maybe they introduced a new paradigm, but then that may have also shifted. So this has been a bit more rambly than I would have liked, but I hope this has been interesting at least to someone. It gave me a chance to sit down and clear my head, and if, in a way that was the purpose for it for me, to look at these books. Again, I will probably do a proper written blog about Hengeworld, and I may actually do another video going into a bit more detail about some of those aspects. We'll have to wait and see. I'm not going to promise anything at the moment. Again, I do apologise, things are slightly sluggish in terms of uploading new content. I'm currently got a big assignment I'm working on for my master's degree, so that is having to take a majority of my concentration and time at the moment. But thank you very much again for joining me for this video. Please let me know of any books that got you interested in archaeology down in the comments. And have you revisited? What are your thoughts on archaeology books, and how long do you think they will remain useful for in terms of the information that's put into them? Do you agree with me? Do you disagree with me? Please let me know in the comments. Remember in the comments, just be nice, to me, to anyone else who's commenting there. Can disagree with people without instigating flame wars, which is, you see too much on YouTube, on Facebook, on Twitter. Too many people just getting really aggravated and upset unnecessarily, and making other people upset. It's okay to be upset, but don't then use that to make other people upset. Too much of this happens on social media. Just be nice if we can all get along. Don't make me do a Dave Gorman found poem, okay? I don't want to do that. So, again, until next time, remember, be nice in the comments and don't eat people. Thank you very much.